Welcome to the SheBreathes Soul Stories podcast, where real conversations meet personal transformation. Inspired by the stories of women who dare to share their truths, this podcast invites you to go on a journey through pivotal life moments and uncovering lessons and breathing deeply into who you are becoming. So I'm very excited to be in the virtual studio today with my new friend, Linda Ugelow. Linda is a speaking confidence and vocal coach and author of a book called Delight in the Limelight. So I'm very excited to learn more about her and her story. So welcome.
It's so wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me on, Jennifer.
Oh, of course. So, I know that you write about this journey of public speaking, the fear that you had yourself, and then
Mhm.
how you overcame that and use it to help others. So, I'd love to just invite you to share your story with us and with our audience today.
I think when I look back, I can connect the dots differently than as I went through my life.
Mm,
But I was always aware when I was young that I was very quiet. And I remember when I was 19 and I went to college up here in Boston, I lived with some graduates that had been in the psychology department.
mm.
And they were asking me a ton of questions. And I thought, wow, no one's ever asked me questions before. And I felt like I never really had spoken before. I had friends, but I was always kind of hiding behind them,
Sure.
tagging along. I was always on the outside. I was never on the inside. And I loved to dance. That was my happy place. And looking back, I realized one of the reasons why I loved to dance is because I didn't like to speak.
Ah,
And I didn't have to speak when I was dancing. I could share experiences with other people. I could express myself without words. And it was also during that year that I took my first dance therapy class. When I came up to Boston, I loved dance and I thought, oh, there's this summer program. I'm going to take it. And it totally turned my head around from the idea of dance being for performance, fun, but for
sure,
performance, to
sure.
something that was for personal development and self knowledge
And creativity and
and
expression.
creativity and expression, all those things. Yes.
Yeah.
So, fast forward, here I am. I decided I was, I gave up my whole business of teaching dance and kind of like dance as therapy, but for personal development, because I didn't want to get clinically trained. I did get a master's degree at Lesley College, but I found that I wasn't able to really make it into a business. I was always struggling. And on top of that, I had a dad who called me every week and said, "So how much money did you make this week?"
Oh my,
And
yeah.
and it was such a pressure. And when he passed away in 1992, after a year or so, I realized I just didn't have the same motivation to keep going. And I think what was going on in my mind was I he was right. And who am I trying to prove this to that I know what I'm doing? I don't know how to run a business. And I kind of gave it up and it just kind of stayed in the background. I didn't give up dancing because I was part of a women's world music group. So I was a performer kind of like on the side on the weekends. We traveled actually pretty extensively around the world too. And I was the principal dancer. So it was actually a wonderful vehicle for me to, if I was a dancer in a dance group, I would just be another body. But in a music group, when everyone's just making music and then suddenly one of the musicians comes out and dances and they're good, then it stands out. So I felt like it was this amazing vehicle for me to be in the limelight in that way. But I always hated having to introduce a song. And our director insisted that everyone in the group had a spot in most every performance that we did so people could hear our speaking voices. And no matter how much I memorized and practiced the song, the introduction, I my heart was racing. I felt disembodied. Here I was like
Sure.
I have a master's degree in expressive arts therapy and I'm a movement, therapy specialist and I felt completely disembodied.
Right.
And and
Which is how most people are walking around in their lives, by the
Exactly.
way.
Well, we had this joke in the group because half the group loved the Limelight. We couldn't get them to stop talking, and we would be
Right.
rolling our eyes like, "Can you stop already so we can do the piece?" And then there were the other half of us that really stressed out about it. So it was evenly spaced, and it was interesting. But I didn't really think twice about it until I became an online entrepreneur, and I took a coaching course, and I thought, oh, I gotta spread my visibility. People don't know me, they can't hire me, they can't buy from me, they can't follow me. So I started to take video classes. Super awkward to be on video, but I thought,
Oh,
I'm just gonna,
especially for our generation, right?
yeah.
Like I mean, we can talk to groups of people when they're in front of us, but
Well,
like
some of us could. I
I,
couldn't do
well,
that.
but I mean, just to put a well, right, we grow with that, but to put a camera in front of us, I mean, it's not natural for those of us who are of a certain age.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and certainly COVID made a huge
Right.
change for everyone. Even if
Yes.
you didn't grow up wanting to be an on-camera personality, it kind of made you into
Mm,
having to aspire to that just
I
to be on a
know.
meeting, a Zoom meeting.
Right.
Yeah, so here I was. My video mentor said one day, "Hey guys, there's this amazing new technology out there called live streaming. And you've got to get on it while you can be an early adopter. And the app is called Periscope." So I thought, hey, here I am kind of later in my life. I was in my late 50s. And I thought I've always been late to the game. Here I am, a late bloomer, but I'm going to be an early adopter. And she said, you got to get on every day. That's what all the marketing gurus say. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get on every day. I'm going to build my following. What she didn't say was how terrifying it was because, there you are. It had no algorithm, which was pretty amazing. And what I mean by
Right.
that is that there was a map of the world. And when someone went live on the broadcast, there would be a little light that would flash. And anyone in the world could say, oh, what's happening in Istanbul, what's happening in Boston. And they could just click on it and they'd come in. You'd see people's names and from where they're from on the screen of your phone. So I would press broadcast and all of a sudden, India, Turkey, uh, Morocco, France,
Oh,
California, Canada. I was like, holy moly. I
right.
was so scared.
Yeah.
Again, my heart was racing, my mouth got dry, I was hyperventilating, felt like my body was disassociating. And I forced myself to just do as best as I could. And every day I was thinking, oh gosh, what else can I do? And I'd Google how to get over the fear of speaking. And I was doing affirmations and meditation and deep breathing and power poses and reframing the fears, excitement, and everything I could grab onto. I
Sure.
tried and I created this very elaborate ritual that I did for like 45 minutes to an hour every day before I would go live stream.
Look
And
at that, huh?
the weeks went by, and I just assumed I'll feel comfortable.
Right.
Of course, after a few weeks. Well, the weeks go by. It's week 10. Day 75, I'm about to press broadcast, and I went, hey, wait a minute. Why is my heart still racing?
Mm, yeah.
And I felt so like confused and annoyed and frustrated because here I was doing it every day. And of course, when you get a lot of experience, that's supposed to lead to confidence. But
Mm,
I wasn't feeling confident.
mm,
I felt like I was confident that I could get on and do it, but I wasn't I was still like having all this nervous body symptom stuff that was making me have to manage it. I didn't want to manage these symptoms. I just wanted to get rid of them. I just didn't
sure.
want to have that anymore because I thought, how much longer can I keep this up?
Mm, right.
So I decided to make a list of all the tools that I knew. EFT, emotional freedom technique, you
Yes.
probably have heard of that.
I teach it, yeah.
Okay, great. different kinds of creative visualization for inner parenting or inner child work, forgiveness, journaling, of course, my dance therapy stuff. And I'm looking at this list of these lists of modalities that I have, and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to be able to get rid of this.
Mm.
But before I get rid of it, what is it?
Yes. This is where we go
What
deeper, right?
is it exactly?
Where
And
does
one
it
of
stem from? Like
That's
anything, right?
right. And
Yeah.
one of the techniques I learned at Leslie in my expressive arts therapy program was called focusing, which is a very simple thing of like looking into the body for the answers. So I closed my eyes to connect with the fear, and I asked if the fear could talk, what would it say?
Yes.
And what came back was, you're going to be attacked. And I thought, okay, is this like cellular memory of being on the
Mm.
Serengeti and being chased by the saber-toothed tiger? Or have I been attacked? And as I thought about it, a memory comes back of my sisters attacking me every time mom put me in the center of attention.
Right. That's
Every time
real.
she said, Linda is such a good girl. Why can't you girls be more like her? They, obviously were hated whenever she said that, and they hated me. And she would leave the room and they would kick me in the shins. They'd say,
Mm.
shut up. They call me stupid. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, duh, of course I don't feel comfortable.
You don't feel safe,
I don't feel safe because I learned it
right?
was dangerous to be the center of attention.
Yes, that's real.
And and then it opened up this curiosity
Mm.
of what else might have happened to me that made me feel like it's not okay for me to speak
And to be visible.
and to be visible. And I thought about the time in seventh grade when, for some reason, the cool girl said, nobody talked to Linda.
Mhm.
And I remember that week I was in the hallway and a girl was chatting with me, and one of the cool girls came by and said, oh, don't forget, nobody talked to Linda. And this
Right.
girl said, oh, I forgot. And she just like walked away from me. And I remember, the tears welling up in my eyes and like standing at my locker, kind of like with my head against the metal, and I'm just feeling so rejected. And as I thought about that, in hindsight, I thought, oh yeah, I felt like people didn't like me or they weren't interested in me. They didn't want to hear what I have to say.
Mm.
And if you have that when you are trying to get on camera or speak to a group and there's a part of you that says, oh, nobody's interested in what I have to say, it's not going to make you feel
Of
comfortable.
course. Of
So,
course.
and then I was thinking, oh yeah, and then there was dad who told me, I'm not really interested in the things you're interested. I'm sorry, Linda, I just don't find them interesting. And I remember one time when he and mom came up to Boston to hear my group perform, and he didn't come until the second half of the performance because he apparently had walked there. And I said, Dad, you missed my solo. And he said, oh, that's all right. It all sounds the same anyway.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of, this feeling of their, not being able to please somebody and
Right.
feeling like, uh, worrying if people are going to like you, if you're going to please them, or if you're good enough, and
Right.
if you're worthy of being looked at and listened to. And all of a sudden I thought, wow, I've got stuff. I got a lot of stuff.
We all have stuff.
We all have stuff.
Yeah,
And
these are real belief systems that are formed in our subconscious brain that
that's
we
right.
carry around, I always say, in a backpack of rocks, of just like stuck, negative energy that does not serve us.
That's
Yeah.
right. And I think what I tell people now is don't ignore your stuff because it's not
Right.
going to ignore you.
Right. It's not going to just disappear without
No,
doing
just
the
because you're
work.
not exactly if you're not paying attention to it, it's still impacting you
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
still getting in your way.
Yeah.
So I actually if I had realized I had all this stuff, I could have cleared it out a long time earlier.
Sure.
But it was 2015, that's when I realized, oh yeah, I've got these things. And I did the EFT, I did the forgiveness, I did the journaling, I did the, dancing for release. And in 5 days, my fear of speaking was gone.
Amazing. 5 days.
5 days.
Wow.
Now, of course, it's not like nothing happened during those 5 days.
Of,
I put in
of
a
course.
lot. It was like it was an intensive, believe
Right.
me. I was on it. I devoted myself. I said, I'm gonna just do what I have to do. And I would remember I was at night in the middle of the night, I was combing through my memories of any kind of comment that was made to me that might have impacted me, or like, when I felt coerced sexually on a date, or I would be walking down the street and a group of construction guys said, "Ooh, nice tits." And, I'm trying to hide myself and I'd wear loose sweatshirts so nobody could see my breasts. And, this way, all the ways that I found myself hiding or shrinking or making myself small and unseen in
Right.
order to protect myself and
Because
stay safe.
you felt safer there. Right.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
all the ways that I allowed myself to find my safe space.
Mm.
It's kind of, as I'm saying that, Jennifer, I'm thinking when I was 23, I traveled solo around the world for a year.
Right. Fearless.
It didn't feel like it was fearless. It felt like a practice in letting go of my fear. And
Yeah.
I remember I had this mantra whenever I felt afraid, open my heart, open my heart.
Yeah.
And like I remember walking down a street in Kathmandu. It was late, maybe 11 or midnight. The streets were pretty empty. And then there was I saw a Nepalese man coming in my direction. Open my heart, open my heart. And then when we got pretty close, he looked up and he jumped. And I realized he was more afraid of me than I was afraid of him.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to just first of all express my gratitude to you for sharing that because that's a lot. Those are hard experiences and realities to unravel for yourself, right? And but to just applaud you for the courage that it took to work through those things because we all have this stuff from our past, a lot of which is from our early childhood, right? That we just don't even recognize or understand until we get into our late 50s and 60s typically. So thank you for sharing that. How do you feel? Because this is really all about this release and this liberation, right? When we tell our stories that are deep, like the ones that you just shared, how do you feel? Like, what is this sort of act of revealing the story? How has it contributed to your own sense of self-empowerment now and led you to this work? Clearly.
The I didn't start working with people around this for about a year.
Right.
I think I was just elated
Mm.
myself to be able to, when I got on stage with my music group and the song I was supposed to introduce came up, I had the thought, oh, good, it's my turn to speak.
Nice. What a shift, right?
Amazing. Or
Yeah.
the a few weeks after this transformation occurred, I had a very hectic day. I was running, doing errands, and I had like a commitment to be on at a certain time on
Mm.
Periscope. And so I kind of rushed back in the house and I set up the camera and I turned it on and I said, guys, I am so grateful that I get to be live streaming with you all because after a hectic day, I can turn on the camera and just relax.
Yeah.
And I
It
thought,
felt
whoa,
completely different for you.
completely different.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that when opportunities came up, I didn't shrink away from them. I could say yes. I mean, like, even something that happened for now, this is 10 years later, but a few months ago, there was a podcast that was being filmed live in Cambridge by some hosts that do not live in this area. One is in California, one's down in the Middle Eastern states. But for some reason, they came to Boston. I thought, oh, I've been on their podcast. I've got to go see them live.
Oh,
And they had a
nice.
couple of speakers that were with them. I walk in, and one of them comes up to me and said, Linda, I'm so glad to see you. One of our speakers had the flu. Can you stand in for them? And I said,
Sure.
sure. What do you want me to do? And not only was it sure, but it was like, oh, goody, I get to
Right.
do that. And so
Exactly.
it's such a different experience to have that freedom. Now, in terms of like sharing my story, for me now, these are just stories. I don't feel the any residual activation because I cleared the activation
Right.
back then. And so they no longer carried the shame or the
Right.
blame
Because
or
release them.
because it was released.
Mm.
And this is what I mean, I think that so I was born in the 50s, and I think that in my generation, doing self-reflective work, which was usually therapy, was only for people who there was something wrong with you.
Right.
And
Right.
so I feel like there was for our generations, this taboo, there was a taboo
Oh, certainly.
on any kind of this work. And so I feel like this is one of the barriers we have to helping people be willing to share their stories. And not only that, I think that there is another what is it,
Yeah.
insidious programming that we all have who have been in the school system,
Yes.
that we are trained to feel like we need to show ourselves as perfect and having it
Of
all
course.
together
Right.
because we have been penalized for
Right.
when we don't.
And it's this idea that if we show up as we really are with our real life experiences, we're going to not belong. We're going to be rejected. We're going to be judged, right? It's such a focus on the external reaction instead of really, coming from things from the inside, that fully embodied, you know, sense of who we are and how we want to be. It's all focused on the external. And I think this is all the programming that gets us all messed up until we can start to understand that and look at this shift that you made for yourself. So tell us now, because I know we're running out of time, but tell us how you took that learning and those experiences and created this offering for others. And what does that look like?
Well, it's been a long process. I've worked with lots of different people in creating like my big idea,
Mm,
and then a signature process, and
right.
then in the process of writing the book, and of course doing private coaching and group coaching, I've gotten a lot of knowledge and data and information and feedback from my clients and students on what it takes to overcome the fear of speaking, which I've brought down to three pillars, like in an
Mm,
inner freedom framework is what I call it. The first is to reveal and heal. So
yes.
reveal just what we are talking about, the stuff.
Feel it and then reveal it and heal it.
Well,
Right?
yes, it's the feeling that leads us to being able
Yeah.
to uncover it and then heal it. So
But
we
don't
need
you
to.
agree that so many people they don't even know how to feel what it is in them?
I would say because I work in the area of, or the niche of overcoming the fear of speaking, people do know what they feel when they're trying to
Around
speak
that specific issue. Okay.
around that specific issue.
That's
And
fair.
that exactly is why I like it,
Right.
because we all have stuff, but people who are trying to speak and they're feeling really uncomfortable, they
Yeah. They're
know the
aware.
feeling. They're aware and they're
Yeah.
motivated and it's
Good point.
clear.
Mm.
So in the same way, so in the second one is restoring safety, which is about restoring safety inside as well as outside. Outside, it's a little obvious, but inside, it's sometimes hard to know, as you say, what are the ways that we are bullying ourselves. I mean, of course,
Mm.
we all
Yeah.
know we have an inner critic, but in the context of, let's say, being on camera, if you watch yourself on video, you know exactly what you don't like. It's so
Exactly.
you can make a long list of things that you're not happy with, and that's the beauty of the a process of using video, is that it brings things up to the surface that are unconscious,
Right.
that you may not even know that you're saying to yourself. But when you make a list of what you don't like when you watch yourself on video, then you can transform those things.
Right. You can change it. You can
Yeah.
address it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good
And then
point.
the third way is repatterning our habits, because when we've
Mm.
been afraid, when we've been hiding, we that affects the way we breathe, that affects the way we use our voice, the way we hold our bodies. And so we need
Mm.
to swap those old things out with new ways that we want to kind of
Yeah.
grow into and lean into and become. Because, you know, if you want to be naturally you, do you want to be your naturally old, inhibited program self, or do you want to
Right.
be something that is perhaps even yet undiscovered?
Ah, that's beautiful. I love that. What a beautiful thought. And invitation.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So on that same um, along those same lines, what would you say to listeners, particularly women, who are considering this invitation to sort of join this truth-telling adventure and to step out and share their stories, their authentic experiences, not how they define them, but how they shaped them, informed them, and led them to who they are today? How
I
would you
feel
encourage
I
them?
feel I feel that our stories are our points of connection.
Mm, absolutely.
It's probably age old part of our human design
Mm,
where we tell stories, we share stories, and we learn from them.
absolutely. In a very different way than just like going to school and having somebody. You remember the teachers and how some teachers told stories, and those were the teachers that you wanted to be in the room with, right? It's the same. We just get at things at a deeper level, a deeper level of understanding. And I agree with you. It's a catalyst. They're a catalyst for empathy and compassion and commonalities and understanding. And boy, the world needs more of all of that, doesn't it?
Yes, I think that if we could stick with that more than our opinions, we'd be in a
Mm.
better place.
Yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely. Well, what a beautiful exchange. I'm so grateful that we were able to meet. We actually met online and then we were at an event together and didn't even realize that we were both there. But I'm happy to have had you accept our invitation to being here today, to sharing your story and the beautiful work that you're doing. How can our listeners get in touch with you? Because I'm sure they're going to want to learn more about your book and these different offerings that you have. What's the best way for them to reach you?
If you Google Linda Ugelow, Ugelow, you'll find me on TikTok, you'll find my website, you'll find my
Wonderful.
LinkedIn. It's an unusual name, and that's where I am.
Well, that it's a good brand to have a memorable name. And Linda, your book is Delight in the Limelight, correct?
Yes, yes,
And they can find that on Amazon, I'm assuming.
correct. And it's also the name of my podcast.
Oh, wonderful. And your podcast, Delight in
Mhm,
the Limelight.
mhm.
And okay, well, again, thank you so much. So grateful to you for everything that you're doing and for making time for us today. Thankful to our listeners who are showing up every week and hearing these beautiful stories that we are having to share with one another. And again, for our listeners, if you have a story, because we all do, if you have a story that you'd like to share, please reach out to me at jen@jengulbrand.com. That's JENN at GULBRAND, gulbrand.com. And we look forward to future episodes of the SheBreathes Soul Stories and to learning more, Linda, about the adventures ahead for you. So thank you again.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You bet.